Hey everybody, welcome to Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina. This is an amazing episode. I have Leslie Zemeckis, this incredible storyteller, documentary filmmaker, author, actor, writer, so many incredible accolades. She's known around the world, and she's a Montecito resident, and she's agreed to be on my show, and I'm going to share that conversation with her. We're going to learn all about her, all the amazing work she does in this community and everywhere. So looking forward to that. That's coming up in just a second. If you're new to this podcast, please hit subscribe on YouTube. Help me grow my subscriber count. And also visit santabarbaratalks.com and consider making a contribution to support these podcasts. I talk to elected officials, business leaders, community movers and shakers, talking about business, government, politics, art, culture, a little something for everybody. And you really don't get this kind of conversation and content anywhere else. I do this all on my own, separate from my other work in the community. So I appreciate any support you can give. Thank you so much. Let's dive right in. The amazing Leslie Zemeckis. Have a great day. Welcome to Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina. It's such a pleasure today to be here with Leslie Zemeckis, who I've been a big fan of on Instagram because she's got a very active, vibrant account. She's such an amazing storyteller. And when she decided to go back to Santa Barbara City College, I thought, wow, what an opportunity to ask her if she would want to be on the show. I'm so lucky because I did a deep dive and you're this amazing storyteller. You've done so much work with documentaries, directing them, telling the stories of women whose stories have been kind of not told and disenfranchised. And we're going to talk about all of that and all the amazing work you do in the community. Leslie, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. I'm really good.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Let's start just kind of right away. You know, you have a very heavy Instagram presence, and you've made all of these award-winning documentaries. And I want to get there in a second, but you first caught my eye when you decided you're going to go back to school. I teach at City College. I think this is amazing. I love Santa Barbara City College as an institution. Talk to me about coming back to school. What's that all about?
Yeah, well, I this is jumping ahead a little. I have a mentoring program of girls, generally college age, 18 to 32. I love that age. I absolutely love that age. Um, as they find their passion for what they want to do. And I was actually a guest teacher in a documentary class at City College, and I had never been there. My kids went there their first year of college or their second year, first year. Um, I'd never been on the campus, and I walked on the campus and I was like, holy smokes, this is absolutely beautiful. And I just thought, well, my kids are in college. You know what? I'm going to sign up for some classes. And, I don't do things little, so I just signed up for uh full-time school with my schedule, but that's okay. I can do it. I'm not going to take just one class. So I'm in class with, 18, 19 year olds, and I love it.
So what's it like to be on campus? You're back to school. You're 5 days a week. How are you managing a full load with the rest of your life?
Well, this semester I'm on campus 2 days a week. The rest are online because I have a lot of travel this year.
Yeah.
I'm doing some book stuff and blah 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 for my work. So I knew that setting up the schedule for this semester, and I'm just one day at a time. I'm just trying to make use of my time and make sure I go through my to-do list and get what I have to get done.
And what are you studying? What you are so accomplished.
Right now, I'm just taking my general ed classes. So, last semester was math and English, and now it's film studies and environmental studies and Italian and communications. It's like I have to look around for my notebooks to see even what I'm taking to remember.
Right. And how do the other students interact with you? The teachers, are they
They're
aware
great.
of it?
Yeah, they're awesome. It's really fun.
Yeah, I went to City College when I was 19 years old. I'm fortunate enough to teach there, and It's such a great institution. I feel like everything that happens on that campus is just everything's just a little bit better. It's just a bit more sweet just because of the view and the history.
Yeah.
And I super enjoy it. So it's so nice to see that you're going back and enjoying that. And I'm sure it'll be an inspiration to a lot of the students, and they're going to be learning from you. Your teachers are learning from you as well.
I don't know, but I mean, I wanted the community college experience.
Yeah.
I think it's great, and I think in education, whenever you want it or don't want it, I think that's important, and that it's offered there. Although I still think the school books cost too much, the textbooks. It's a great opportunity for people, and I like to see these kids in there figuring it out.
Yeah. So that's a good segue. Let's go back to a little bit of your history because you are a storyteller and you've been committed to telling the stories of women whose stories have not been told, disenfranchised. You've talked about women who have been sex workers, who have had to survive, accumulated power. I tell you, I ordered it on Amazon, Grandes Horizontal. I was like, wow, this is amazing because it's so
Thank you.
historical, so educational, but talking about how women empowered themselves to be more than just second class citizens. And they actually accumulated all the power and they were running the show and telling that story and that history, and not in a way that is with any sort of judgment, but actually saying these are smart women who were doing these things for themselves at a time when they didn't have opportunities. And you've told many stories similar to that. You've got the Tiger Tamer documentary, which I was watching too, and I was just amazed by that as well. And a lot of this, you have a very famous TED Talk where you talk about these things. So, Leslie, why are you so interested in telling the stories of women, repressed women over history?
Well, I've always been interested in stories. So it's something I kind of fell into as an actor. I was doing a one-woman show and I based my character off burlesque, Gypsy Rose Lee, Mae West. And then I realized I didn't really know what the word burlesque meant, as a lot of people don't. And I started just researching that. And there wasn't a lot about the women. I mean, they would say their name or their act, but not what happened to them, how they got into it. There's tons on the men. And just like the career of burlesque, which was generally the 20s to the 50s, was the golden age, the men, the comedians, they went on to other careers. They went into radio. They went into television and movies. Abbott and Costello, Alan Alda's father. The women couldn't. They could never cross over. Even somebody as big as Gypsy Rose Lee, when she was hired in Hollywood to perform in movies, they made her change her name. It makes no sense. So I just thought, I want to know who these women were, not just their name and what their act was. Who were they? Because at that time, to semi take your clothes off, and they really weren't totally nude. Doesn't matter if they were or were not. It was a really big thing. So I started researching. I got connected to some women that were 70s, 80s, 90s. And I just thought, I'm going to tell this story. So I called a friend, my friend Sherry Hellard, who ended up being the producer. And I said, let's go film these women and men. Most of the women, had survived. The men actually hadn't. They died off, most of them. And we spent 2 years crossing the country filming, from costumers to dancers to singers to comedians to trapeze artists, and telling their stories. And from that, there were so many stories that I wrote in the book on the same name, Behind the Burlicue, which is the documentary and the book. And from that came my second film, Bound by Flesh, two Siamese twins, conjoined, if you want to be, politically correct, but I like Siamese twins, that were briefly in burlesque, which is how I heard about them, which I found horrifying. And I had to tell their story. From telling their story, I found out about Mabel Stark, the world's first female tiger trainer. And that's my third film, Mabel Tiger Trainer. So it just kind of focused my storytelling to these women that were really misunderstood, marginalized, dismissed, oh, you were in the circus, the circus really isn't anymore, at least especially working with animals. You must hate them, you must beat them, and all this misconception of that, like the Siamese twins, they were freaks, they must be dumb. They just, I mean, and their story is absolutely amazing. Amazing sisters who never wanted to be separated. So I just kind of fell into like this is where the voices that I want to bring to light. And there's many like that who we just dismiss. We go, burlesque. They were prostitutes, right? No, they actually weren't. They were artists, a lot of them. Some were just trying to make a living during the Great Depression when nobody else could, but they could, and they could feed their families, and they could work 52 weeks out of the year. It was an amazing American big industry, entertainment.
So, can you talk a little bit about your mother's mother and what you shared in that TED Talk that, in the first place, sort of got you thinking about stories that have not been told? Because this is very personal to you and wanting to know your family history.
Right. Well, her picture sits on my desk back here, Maggie, and I never knew anything about my grandmother's mother beyond kind of like alluded to, not a proper person. She left my grandmother when she was one or two, and then she sent this postcard saying, here's a picture of your mother so you will know how ugly she is, which she's not. And I just, and I've always known that story, and I just thought, why didn't anybody ever find out what happened to her? I mean, I've done some research, and I'm starting to, I don't know how much of her story I'm going to actually be able to tell, but it's these women just disappear, or they're not even asked. And she probably has a really fascinating story for the times, back, I don't even know what this is, but you can tell by her clothes. It's, to leave a child, to leave a marriage was really kind of risky. So, that always was something like in the back of my mind. It's like, why did, and now probably a lot of her history is lost.
Yeah.
Because nobody asked anybody who might have known her.
Right. It's sort of just erased from history unless somebody wants to go and dig. But if you don't have somebody documented in that moment, either orally or written, it's so hard to find it, which is why your documentaries are so impressive. I was thinking with the Tiger Tamer, right? Why is this not a huge movie? Why
I
don't we
know
know this is part of
we want to do it. I know it
our history?
absolutely is an amazing story of somebody. And this is, I always kind of go into my documentaries with a question, which drives me. The burlesque. It was like, who were these women?
Yeah.
I thought, what does it take? What kind of courage do you have to go to be just your average Joe or Jane, and to go into a tiger's cage and start working with them? I thought it was all about courage. It ended up being about love. But it was very hard to break into the circus unless you came from a family that was generations. Mabel Stark, did not. She ran away from a very abusive, probably sexually abusive family dynamic, really poor, pulling tobacco leaves out of the fields when she was a kid. And she found her way to Venice, California, where a circus would summer. And she just looked at a tiger that was in a cage and fell in love. And I understand it after filming, going around finding former or current tiger trainers, not very many, and being, this close to their tiger, obviously with a cage in front of me. There's something super mesmerizing about them. And, that was it. That's what she was going to do. But her first husband, maybe before they were married, I can't remember, he was a big famous animal trainer. And he's just like, well, we'll put you in there with the lions and see how it works. If you live, I'll help you. And, stuff that like just cannot happen today. And then she just had a knack with these animals. But what I liked about her and everybody that I interviewed, they weren't under this illusion that they're this big god or goddess that tames the animal. They actually don't. They try and train them to see how smart they are, what they can do, but they know that animal always wants to get them. And she was gotten, supposedly her body was head to toe scars. Never blamed the animal. She's like, I'm in their space, I'm doing this. But she had some really, really bad accidents, if you will, where she could have, died. But her
Yeah.
story is incredible.
Yeah. She had great respect for the animals, knowing that at any moment this could
Yeah.
be it, right? And
Yeah.
so I want to talk to you. I did spend 45 minutes with Granda's Horizontal watching that, and watching it as honestly, it was about 10 o'clock last night, and there's some
Perfect.
it's got some moments in there, some visual moments. You're like, whoa, wow, this is amazing,
Well,
and
I wanted to push the limits of the documentary form. If you're um I don't like to do my documentaries with a bunch of stills. I want footage. And obviously these are women from the 1850s to 1870. It's a very specific time in the Second Empire in Paris, France, Napoleon III, where they got all the power. And I hired these burlesque girls who looked exactly like the women they portray, and they're very comfortable with their bodies. And I don't think you could talk about courtesans without having nudity. I mean, it's beautifully, beautifully shot. And so that's what I wanted to do. I was like, what is that feeling? It's like, and you understand how gorgeous these women were. And that's why they used that to obtain their power. Married women couldn't. They couldn't have their own property. They couldn't have their own house. They had no say so of where they're going. Their husbands had all that power. But these women, the courtesans, had their own.
what did you learn from telling this story of understanding these women and the situations they put themselves in? I found it was interesting. There's sort of different classes. If you were somebody who, you know, sold your body 7 days a week, you were one thing. If you did it one day a week, it was sort of more
Right.
acceptable. If you were married, and so what did you
Well,
learn?
like society, it's like interesting society at the time. It was legal to be a prostitute, but you had to register with the police at the time. These women were not prostitutes. Very different thing. Almost like being a mistress. I mean, it's definitely selling themselves to a man.
Yeah.
It's not a transactional quite, it's not like, okay, I'm with you tonight. You're giving me this amount of money. The men expected to buy them homes, to buy them horses, to be seen with them. They weren't hidden. They would go to the opera, they'd go to a restaurant, they'd go wherever they wanted with these women. And it was a status symbol. The more wealthy the woman was, more, the counts and the barons and the dukes and the emperor wanted to be seen with this woman. It was absolutely a status symbol. And they used it because there was no crossing society. There's no climbing from the gutter up to marry and be a count. Very, very rarely. Sometimes somebody married, but it's not, there wasn't other choices. I mean, they didn't want to be a girl who's sewing in a back room for 14 hours a day, just pure drudgery. And they had the opportunity because they were smart and they were charming and they ended up educating themselves.
Yeah. Are there lessons we can learn from this period? I mean, we're in 2025 and we're sort of in this
Backwards.
repressive situation where, everyone there's very quickly the things that we had accepted and progressed in are now being rolled back by the current administration. And are there any lessons to learn about, this period of the mid 1800s about how we exist as people?
I think there's probably so many lessons to learn. And even though they were slighted, like a royal woman would not have acknowledged their existence, the men did, and they were written about in the papers as celebrity. And I just think this judgment that we continue to have on people, I'll just say any people, women in particular, what they do, what they look like, where they came from, just drives everything. And it's like, who cares? Let people rise however they want to rise and don't have this faux shock about it. When I was telling somebody I was going to do this documentary and it was a woman, she said, "Oh my God, don't make it sound greater than it was." It's like, well, for some of them, it sounds pretty great. If that was my opportunity, I'm not saying I wouldn't have done it. I mean, there's not very many, but I've been in a house built by one of these women, and it's spectacular. It's not like you do everything for a house, but you're not living in a hovel or on the street or starving or your children are starving. We can't. I try and do all my books, all my documentaries with the history of what was happening to women and at the time,
Yeah.
to inform, what were they going to do? They didn't have choices.
Yeah. So can we go back a little bit earlier because obviously you didn't just wake up one day and say, I want to do documentaries about women. You have your own journey, your own
Kinda.
well, you have your own value system, for
Yeah.
something like this. You were shaped in a certain way, you were raised in a certain way. Can you talk to me about your upbringing, your childhood? Did you want to be a documentary filmmaker? Did you want to be a storyteller? What were your influences that sort of made you open your eyes in this way?
Well, I've always loved documentaries, so I would say like watching a Ken Burns was like, oh my God. And because I read so much, because I am an actor, I can I know story and I can figure out story, and I just knew I could do a documentary. To me, it's like a book and making the chapters and how I just knew I could do it. It was all in my head as I was filming. I was like, oh, I'm going to take that piece and that's going to be my beginning and da 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 da. It's just that it's I don't know. I mean, I've never thought about being a documentary filmmaker. Love them, watch them all the time. Like I said, like Ken Burns is just very clean and tells a story in detail with all the sensory stuff, which is what I try to do. Um, I don't try and do odd camera angles to be new and different, which you see a lot now, which is just crazy for me. So it was just something I knew I could do. And then from that, it's like writing a book. So I started writing books. I knew how to tell a story.
Yeah.
And I think that's strictly from just being a complete bookworm.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, reading is so important. You can travel the world
Yeah,
by picking up a book and you learn so much.
absolutely. Yeah.
We live in this area where, we have, going back to some of your films about women and self-empowerment, we live in this era of like OnlyFans, right? And there's sort of this stigma around it still, but the idea is the same. It's just I'm going to take matters into my own hands and be an
Yeah.
entrepreneur and make money
Right.
and be self-sufficient, and I'm not going to have to rely on anyone else. And so we do see a little bit of gains here, and maybe over time we get to see more acceptance of whoever is doing it, that
Right.
this is a business decision. This is smart, and there are still ways that we can rise that may not be traditional, but they work for us and we need to be more accepting of that. And I think that's what comes across in, your latest documentary is a respect for these people for not settling for what society's expectations are for them and self-empowering. And that's really admirable. Who are some of your role models? Do you have role models that you've looked up to over the years?
Um, it's funny. I think about that. I just finished reading Cher's memoir. I know she
Oh,
was like a big influence because she was always outspoken. She went her own way, still does. I think that was a big influence. I think the bigness of Elizabeth Taylor's life certainly was. I would think those are the two, but I mean, I think there's many, that just have passed through my life that it's like, I like that or I like that. It's always kind of studying things, and I've always been fascinated by the subject of courtesans. So I was glad that I did the book. I'm actually looking at my shelf over there of like probably 30 books of research.
In researching you're an actor, you're a writer, you're author, filmmaker, so many different things, and you've had to, it seems like, not reinvent yourself, but just continually progress in your art. And I first found you on Instagram, and you have a very appealing Instagram. And it seems like you post every morning because I feel like when I wake up in the morning and I go to my phone, it's Leslie Zemeckis post right there. And it's not like I'm spending extra time on your thing. It's just I think you do it regularly, or you must time it. And you have a large following. Can you talk about that? Because you've got an incredible Instagram page. How do you have time for all those posts? Talk to me about how that developed.
It's just it's using this thing that we call evil, this social media for, everything's got its upside and downside. Um, it's using it for what you want. Like you were talking about the OnlyFans, which I'm not on, by the way, no judgment. But like in the old days of acting, you had to have I do, an agent and a manager, or nobody knew where you were. Nobody could get to you. It's the same with books. You can reach an audience, you can reach like-minded people that could possibly buy your book or like your movies, or maybe are inspired to go to college at whatever age. And I just try and use it honestly and with fun and humor of this is what I'm doing. Maybe you'll like this book. It's got a lot of, maybe you'll like this film with a lot of naked ladies. And just having fun. And then that's it. It's like I post and then I'm doing homework, or I'm doing this, or I'm at the gym or whatever. I'm not like an influencer who's spending hours putting their makeup on. Sometimes I look like poop. And, trying out a bunch of products, those take hours. I can't do, that's not my job. I don't want that to be my job. I'm a creative person, and that's, I want to write, I want to make my films. That's what I want to do. But
Yeah.
it's just being able to say, look, I'm here, whether you, Mr. Agent, think I am or I'm not. I mean, I know people have found me from there and hired me as an actor, a couple jobs last year, exactly. So it's just like, hey,
And you do it yourself. No one else is doing that for you.
no, no.
What's with the pig stories? You love
Mhm.
animals. You got a pig.
Uh,
What's going on?
I've got many pigs. Well, my daughter was the one who fell in love with pigs, and we have a place in Italy, and we're like, okay, fine, you can have pigs there. And then she had this fantasy that, oh, I'm going to get there. I traveled before her to Italy, had these little pigs, and she has this fantasy, oh, I'm just going to come up and hug them. Well, no, they need to be socialized. So I spent every day for 2 hours on my hands and knees in a little tiny room with these pigs so that they would be that way when she came. And I just absolutely fell in love. And so we have eight, let me see, is that right? Eight in Italy. And then we came back to Santa Barbara, and somebody said, oh, I just, temporarily rescued this pig that was on Hollywood Boulevard, escaped from a homeless camp. Its muscles were atrophying from being kept in a cage. It was tested positive for narcotics, absolutely starving. Do you want to have a pig in Santa Barbara? I was like, yes, I do. And so we got him Peanut, and then they're very social. You can't just have one. So we rescued another one, Pickles. So I love them. They're smart. They're amazing, amazing animals.
Yeah. And how much of your life is traveling? I feel like when I look at your Instagram, you're in a lot of different places. You're not necessarily in your home. Um, uh,
Every month,
every month.
every month for the last 23 years, except for the pandemic when we couldn't. I'm absolutely every month.
So is that part of your lifestyle? You want to see the
I
world?
love it.
You
My
go.
bags are always packed. That is my motto, and it scares my husband, but that's just too bad. He's gotten used to it.
Oh, you travel?
Like,
Okay. That's amazing.
together or separate, depending on what's like. I'm about to go to San Miguel de Allende in Mexico in 2 weeks to speak at a big writers conference. So I'm
Yeah.
excited about that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I love your Instagram page. It's
Thank
great,
you.
and it's just you have a lot of good content on there, and I'm always sort of like, wow, this is impressive. And where is she at now? But talking about your writing, you've done some stuff locally with Roger Durling, the Santa Barbara International Film Festival,
Yeah.
and you started this writing, I guess, class, or that where you
It,
teach young
it's
women.
a mentoring program, and I think it was right. It must have been right after things kind of opened up with the pandemic, but it gave me the idea. I never really had a mentor. Nobody ever told me like how to do anything. And I went to Roger and I said, I have this idea to have a class, either Zoom, meet in person, of young girls. And I keep the age specific so they can build their community from that because it's very important as a writer. Um, and we get together and I'll help them craft a story. And then Entity Magazine, which is a women's magazine online, they have like 1 million readership. They publish the girls' stories. So after you go through this 6-week program, you're a published author. And every week we meet by Zoom, and it's now from all over the country. I have best-selling authors that come on and give them advice because nobody knows how it's done unless somebody tells you. I mean, it's just like a mystery. Last night I taught an acting class for directors, and I did this for 10-10-10 for the Santa Barbara Film Festival a few weeks ago because these young actors or young directors, excuse me, they get the camera, they get the equipment, they learn how to do the Avid and set up all this. But I said, Roger, please let me do a workshop like how to work with actors. It'll just improve it so much. There's just little things. So it's always this mentoring that I'm about to start in April, my 9th session of Stories Matter. It's usually like 8-10 girls, 6 weeks. We'll work on one story every week, probably 3 or 4 of the weeks. They have different authors come on and they can ask them anything they want. We talk about process, and it's really been one of the most rewarding things ever. I love it.
Is it memoir style? Are they talking about themselves? Is it
No,
fiction?
it's I've honed it down to one theme. It's a woman you should know, and it's got to be a real person. It could be somebody they know. It could be somebody from history, and it's 800-word piece on that woman. A lot of them write about their grandmothers, which is really, really interesting. Yeah.
What does it take to be a good storyteller? What tips do you offer to people? A lot of people think they can write. A lot of people think they can't write. They have this massive fear. They can't even get words on a page. Other people think they're better than they are. I mean, what do you do to sort of break through all that and help people?
Well, I try and just be really simple. It's like, okay, so somebody says, "Oh, I want to write my grandmother." Okay, what about her? What is the story about? What do you want to write in really simple terms? I don't talk about theme. I don't talk about art. We don't work on grammar. It's like, how do you get this story out and start? What is going to hook your audience that they're going to read the rest of the words because there's so much out there. People would rather be on their phones. So and it's just crafting it in a way that anybody can do. And then you worry about all the other stuff, but it's just tell this story that you want to tell and don't worry about anything else. You know, I mean, we go over them and over them and over them. It's just writing makes you a better writer. Reading makes you a better writer. Gathering words, have a notebook and you keep words there, having your community. I make them build a community. It's like start reaching out to each other on Instagram, in this group, whatever it is, see what other authors are doing, reach out to them because authors are so accessible. They're awesome. And it's stuff like that. And I'm so thrilled because I'm co-hosting a writing retreat in France, Bordeaux, France, in October. And it's for that. It's for the young, not of age, young person who's never written before, or they want to do their second book, or maybe they want to do poetry or screenplays. And it's like, how do you do it? You're gonna start and you're gonna do it. And we're just gonna work on it. And it's gonna be, it's fun, but you have to do it. If you have only 10 minutes a day to write, you write. So it's not like, oh my God, someday I'm going to do it. Someday I'm going to do it. It's like, no, did it. I got my 10 minutes in. Oh, you know what? I can squeeze another 10 minutes. Oh, look, I'm going to take a half hour here. And it's really simply doing it. Telling the girls, it's like your first draft is shitty. Your first 10 drafts might be shitty. You don't let that stop you. It's like, okay, like when I read my stuff early on, it's like, okay, this is really bad, but I know to keep going because every time I go back to a draft, it gets better and better and better. And that's just the process.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so wise. Nobody is perfect the first time, just miraculously fingertips to keyboard, revisions.
Well, supposedly Anne Rice was.
Yeah, but for the rest of us,
I know.
just get better.
You have to work.
The more you
Just
do
do
it.
it. I mean, if you want to get better, spend 10 minutes and go over 3 sentences and make them better.
Yeah. And is there a difference in teaching women versus teaching men? What is it specifically that you want to focus on?
I just wanted, because I'm a girl and I didn't have a mentor, and I wanted it to be a really safe space. They could talk about girl things, they could, whatever. I just wanted it to be specific to that. The retreat in Bordeaux, France is men and women. But my stories matter is just women because that's what I wanted to focus on.
Yeah. Do you, of your documentary works, do you have a favorite? Do you have something that you're most proud of? You love them all equally,
I
right?
do. They're all my children. I mean, I'm proud of the first one that I got it done. It was on Showtime. I'm proud of the second one. It was #5 debuting on Netflix. I'm proud of Mabel. It won a bunch of awards. I'm super proud of Grand Horizontals because it surprised me with all its festival wins. I just didn't expect that. I mean, I liked it. I loved it, but it was like, oh, this is resonating with people somehow.
And do you have other projects back here in your head? You're still
I
looking.
do.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because these stories that you're telling, you would think that they would be part of our history, right? That already we would know them, but we don't just in our regular growing up. So what you're doing is really important. You're just finding these stories and following your passion and doing that and then turning it into these incredible documentaries. It must take a lot out of you. Like Grandes Horizontal, I mean, can you do anything else? Are you just working on that for a year? I mean, how does that?
No, I go back and forth. I'm really motivated if I'm working on a book and a film. So say I can only write for so many hours a day, 4 hours a day, then I'll go edit. So I can keep being creative. And I like bouncing between the two. I love editing so much, on an Avid Films. That I could do for more hours of the day than actual writing a book. But I like bouncing between both art forms.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for younger, for any age women actually who want to be better writers, who want to find their voice, or maybe they just don't know what they want to do or have not found their sense of purpose yet? What would you say to people like that?
I would say keep looking and try things and volunteer places. And, you just never know where that spark is going to come from. And be open to it. But, it is all hard work, but it doesn't mean it's not fun or it's not frustrating. And there's so much you can do yourself. If you want to make a film, you can make it on your phone. You can write a book and self-publish it. I've never done that. I think that's difficult, but you can do it. So there's so many more outlets that you don't need to wait around for somebody to do anything. You can find a place where it will live.
How do you stay so energetic and active and vibrant all the time? I mean, it's
Because
tough.
I love what I do. I love this diving in and figuring it out and then giving back. I mean, I learned so much doing my mentoring program. I hope as much as them, but I really get energized from them. I learn. I love what I'm doing.
Yeah, so much so you're going back to school and adding on additional work from there. But
It's a
you know,
little crazy.
well, maybe I think you're even busier than me, which I thought was not possible. But maybe at some point we can grab a cup of coffee on
Yeah.
a day that you're on campus. But thank you, Leslie. I really appreciate your time and sharing your stories of your great documentary work and your storytelling. And this has been a pleasure. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, have a great day.
Okay, you too.